So we're going to get started, and we're going to get started by talking about meditation kind of 101. What is it? How does it work? How do we do it? And then we're going to do a little short breathing meditation, about 5 minutes, not long, right? So what is meditation? Meditation is a technique of familiarizing your mind with something. It's kind of a technique of choice, right? And that kind of word, choice, is going to come up a lot today. So meditation is all about choosing what you want your mind to be really good at. Right? So let's think of some things that you're really familiar with, right? You're really good at. Tying your shoe, right? We're going way back. Tying your shoe, you can do no problem. All right? You can do it in the dark. I don't know, upside down. It'd be very impressive, but you could probably do it. Tying your shoe comes pretty naturally to you at this stage of your life. Oh, you like my hair? Thanks. It was a little wild, so I just kind of pulled it back. Very professional. Oh, yeah, I should do this more often. Professionalism isn't always my strong point. I lost my train of thought because I was being complimented. So tying your shoe is something you're super familiar with. And because of that, you don't really have to think about it that much, right? You just do it, right? Now, when you were a young kiddo, right, back in the day, that wasn't the case at all. In fact, it was one of the more difficult challenges you've ever been given, to take 2 strings and turn them into a beautiful arcing bow, right? So what happened from it being the most difficult thing to pretty much coming effortlessly to you? Practice, right? You became familiar with it. You tied your shoe over and over. Repetition. It started to become super familiar to your mind, super familiar to your body too, the mechanics of tying your shoe. And as a result, boom, easy. Velcro, you like Velcro's it's pretty good. Hard to argue with that. But that is the benefit. It can be a benefit of familiarity. Familiarizing your mind with something is that thing starts to come to you a little bit more naturally, right? Now, it can go the other way. And we're going to talk a little bit about that with anxiety, right? But let's think about anger, right? So pretty easy to get angry. Don't have to try at all. Something happens, boom, angry. You're not like, hold on a second, got to get angry. It just happens. Now, being patient doesn't always just happen, right? We have to put in some effort, right? You could say it doesn't seem to come as naturally, right? This is because we're angry, or we're an angry person inherently, or something like that. It basically boils down to your mind's had a lot of practice getting annoyed in the course of your life. And so your mind is like, I got it. I will get annoyed. I know what to do, right? We've had a lot less practice. Our mind has had a lot less practice being patient. And so as a result, it's not as familiar to our mind. We have to kind of push our mind in that direction. It takes a little bit more effort, right? So meditation is all about dictating what you want your mind to be familiar with. So let's think about relaxation, right? Because that's what most people get into meditation for. Meditation doesn't equal relaxation, right? It's not creating relaxation. What it's doing is it's a method of teaching you to get in touch with your relaxed self. You know, that version of yourself that's super laid back and chill and cool. Yeah. It comes out from time to time. It's in there. It's always in there. And the more familiar you are with it, the easier it is for you to kind of access that version of yourself, right? Calm self. And meditation is a technique to do that, right? All the things you want, being calm, being less anxious, they're there for you, right? Meditation is a method of training your mind to help you get there, right? I always like to do this kind of analogy. I think it's pretty good. It illustrates I think, well, what we're doing with meditation. If you think about a very still lake or a pond, right, and there's no wind or anything, you can see a reflection in that, in that water source. Now, if it starts to rain a little bit, what happens to that reflection? Not as easy to see, right? Gets a little rippled from the raindrops. If it really starts to gust wind, it's blowing all over the place, you might not be able to see that reflection at all. But the reflection is there. It's just kind of obscured by the raindrops, right? So your mind is the exact same way. Your mind, by default, is very peaceful, calm, cool, collected, thinking reasonably about all your problems, right? Not becoming wildly anxious about things that you're worrying about, which we'll get into today a lot, right? That's you. And all of the stress, right? All of the worries, all of the kind of things that are pulling your attention in different directions all day long. I got to do this for work. What if I don't get this done? All these things, they're like raindrops. And it's making it difficult for you to access this peaceful state, this peaceful mind state. Peaceful you, right? But just like the reflection, it's in there. And it's a very important point, right? Because we don't have to go out and get being calm, relaxed. It's not out there, right? It's in here, right? We just got to get a little bit more in touch with accessing it, right? And that's what meditation is all about, right? Cool? Hopefully that was helpful. So how do we go about doing this, right? How do we go about using this wonderful sounding technique? Well, the first thing we're going to have to train to do is a technique called single-pointed concentration. And this is a technique designed to kind of clear out some of the clutter in your mind, clear away some of those raindrops, right? That way we can access the peacefulness of ourselves. Right? Single-pointed concentration sounds quite fancy, but all it means is we're going to focus on one thing. So we are not multitasking. Now, we are very good at multitasking. We are very familiar with multitasking, and so multitasking comes very naturally to our mind. And so sometimes when we go, hey, mind, you're going to focus on one thing, and that's it, our mind's like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, and then immediately is thinking about a million things. Not because it's incapable, but because it's just used to doing that, right? So we're going to train our mind to be okay with and even kind of look forward to single-pointed concentration. We're going to focus so exclusively on one thing, in this case our breath, that all other things that are normally clamoring for our attention, they're going to start to fade into the background just a little bit. Similar to if you've ever felt like in the zone, working out, or maybe you're working on a project at work or something like that, right? You're super plugged in, you lose track of time, you don't hear all those noises that are really normally kind of distracting you and annoying you. They're still there. It's just, they kind of faded a little bit. So it's the same thing, but we're going to start to train our mind to do this intentionally on our command because it doesn't always obey our commands. I don't know if you have that experience, but I certainly do. Okay, so we use our breath. This is we're going to do breathing meditation. You probably have heard of this. It's not that uncommon anymore, which is awesome, and it's a really good entry point into learning how to meditate. And the reason that, at least I think it's so good to use your breath, is that your breath is always with you. All right, this is a really important takeaway from training in meditation. You have what you need to do this right now, wherever you are. Whatever your situation is, you have what you need to do this, right? You don't need perfect quiet. You don't need to retreat to a mountaintop or a cave or whatever. You have everything you need. You got your breath, right? So if you can become really good at using your breath to relax, empowering, right? You're able to do this whenever you need to. Right? So we're going to do a little breathing meditation now. And it's only going to be about 5 minutes. It's not going to be anything crazy long, okay? That's kind of a misconception about meditation, that in order for it to work, you have to meditate for an hour with perfect silence or something. No. We're going to start small, right? That's the most important thing. Consistency is the most important thing. So we're going to start small. We'll do about 5 minutes. I'm going to guide us through this, and instructionally, pretty straightforward. we're going to make a choice. I'm going to focus on my breath. There we go. We've made it. And then we're going to do that and pay attention to whenever your mind drifts away from being exclusively focused on your breath. Maybe you're thinking about something that happened earlier in the day, right? If that happens, right, we notice it. Whoops, not right now to those thoughts, and we're going to guide our focus back to breathing. That's it. Those 3 steps. Make a choice to focus on our breath. Notice when our attention drifts away, bring your attention back. This is training in single-pointed concentration. This is training in meditation. Cool? Okay. So, step 1, be comfy. All right? There is no perfect seating arrangement. Some people like to sit in a chair, like I am. Some people like to sit on the floor, cross-legged or whatever, on a cushion. Doesn't matter. You can lay down. You had a long day? Go ahead, lay down. It doesn't really matter. All that matters is that you're relatively comfortable. That way you're not focused on being uncomfortable and you were able to think about some other things, right? Cool. All right, so make sure you're nice and comfy in whatever seat or arrangement you're in, and you can go ahead and close your eyes, and I'm going to guide us through about a 5-minute breathing meditation. Okay. Whenever we start a meditation, it's a really good habit to check in with yourself. Ask yourself, how am I feeling right now? In this exact moment. Right now. Happy, sad, tired, energetic, it does not matter. We're not doing anything about it. We're just noticing. This is a training in mindfulness. Mindfulness is an active awareness of your own thoughts, moment to moment, so you can respond to them in a skillful manner. So just take a moment and check in. And having done that, you can now turn your full attention to your breath. You're making a choice. You are choosing to focus single-pointedly on breathing, in and out, gently and naturally. You do not need to take big, deep breaths. You do not need to forcefully exhale the air. Just breathe as you normally would, in and out. And allow yourself to relax a little bit into your chair or cushion. Single-pointedly focused on each moment of your breath, following the air as it moves into your nose, following that air as it exits. Single-pointedly focused, present with your breath. As you breathe in and out, gently, naturally. At some point, you may notice your attention being pulled away from your breath. Maybe you're thinking about something that happened earlier today or something coming up later, after this class ends. Whenever you notice that this has happened, we can just say not right now to those thoughts. We'll get to them later. And then guide your focus back to breathing. In and out, gently and naturally, as you begin to relax a little bit more into your chair or cushion. You have nothing else to do. You have nowhere else to be. Just here, right now, breathing, enjoying each moment of your breath. Keep bringing your attention back to your breath whenever it drifts. This process of choosing to focus single-pointedly on your breath, noticing when your attention drifts, and being able to bring your attention back to breathing. That is meditation. You are meditating right now. You are training your mind to focus on what you want to focus on. And right now, you're focusing on your breath. Breathing in and out. Relaxing and enjoying sitting here. How wonderful. Just for the next few moments, continue to breathe in and out gently, naturally. Enjoy yourself. Okay, when you're ready, you can open your eyes. How we doing? How'd it go? Easy, hard? Everyone's going to have a different experience, right? So maybe this is your first time ever meditating, right? And you're like, whoa, that was way more difficult than I had thought. My mind's all over the place. It's drifting all over the place. It's so hard for me to stay focused. That's totally fine. And it shouldn't be a really big surprise, because when's the last time you'd ever did this? In the list of things that we think are pretty useful and important or enjoyable, sitting quietly and focusing exclusively on our breath usually doesn't fall on that list, or at least very high up, right? I'm glad, Lisa and Rosa, you had a good experience. So if you found that to be difficult, all that means is you need a little bit of practice. Your mind is not familiar doing this. In fact, when you are focusing on one thing, your mind's like, what's going on here? We got a lot of stuff to do. All right, we got to do work. We got to do this. We got to do that. Right. So part of this is getting your mind used to doing this and starting to see the benefit in doing this. And it's going to take some time because it's new. There's not much else to it, right? Cool. Good. It was a challenge to stay focused. Yeah. So I mean, and look, it's still a challenge for me too. I've been meditating a very long time, and it is still challenging. Especially some days are going to be worse than others, right? In terms of your ability to focus. But sitting down here, if you're sitting down here, like meditating, focusing on your breath, however it goes, you're training. You're gaining some ground. You're training your mind to focus on what you want to focus on. And over time, it's going to get easier. Just like tying your shoe, right? Now you're an expert at it. Cool. Okay. Haley, I'm glad you're feeling calm. All right. So now we're going to talk about our topic, right? And if you have any other questions about breathing meditation or kind of what we were just focusing on, you can still kind of fire those questions away at me. But I'm going to move on to this topic. And this is a very personal topic to me because it's how I originally got into meditation. And chances are it might be why you're here. It's very common, right, to try to work on anxiety. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that is, what our mind's doing when it's getting anxious, and maybe some different ways we can try to approach helping our anxiety, right? Okay, so what is your mind doing when it's anxious? It's kind of a weird question, right? Sometimes we just think I'm anxious, right? But we don't really like kind of analyze, well, what happened here, and like what's my mind doing? There's a lot going on, right? So one of the key questions I like to present when we're talking about this is, when you are anxious or worried, it's the same thing, right? Where is your mind? Is it in the past? Is it in the present? Or is it in the future? Right? These are the only places our mind could be, if you think about it, right? Thinking about the past, thinking about now, right now, which is now is the past now, or the future, right? It's kind of tempting to say present, right? Because when we're anxious, what's happening? I'm anxious now. I'm worried about this thing now, right? It feels now. But if we really kind of think about anxiety and what's going on, the core of anxiety is based in the future, right? When will this feeling go away? Right? We're worried that this feeling will not go away. Or we have a project coming up at work. What if I embarrass myself? What if it doesn't go well? Right? Those are things that have not happened. They're in the future, right? And everyone has different kind of triggers for anxiety and things that make them worried and anxious. But it is a really interesting exercise to think about where is your mind when this is happening. And I think you might find that more often than not, it's kind of in the future, right? I like to say that anxiety is an exaggeration of a future outcome. An exaggeration of a future outcome. Right? Now, thinking about the future is good. Right? Like, let's say you were going to go on vacation and you didn't ever think about the future. Well, there's probably a 99.99999 repeating percent chance that you're going to forget something important. At least I do, right? So having your mind be in the future is not bad. It can be very good, right? The problem is that anxiety traps you there, all right? And I mentioned this kind of word choice we're gonna focus on a lot today, right? What we want is the choice. Do I want to be thinking about this project that I have to do for work right now? Is that what I want to be doing? If the answer is yes, then cool, right? But if the answer is no, you know what? I want to be focusing on being with my family right now or watching this show or whatever, right? Well, that's where we're going to start to gain a little bit more power over our anxiety, right? Choosing where we want our mind to be. One of the big goals in dealing with anxiety by using meditation is finding ways to untrap your mind from being in the future, right? Because if your mind's in the future, where is it not? It's not in the present. And there's a lot of cool stuff happening in the present, right? But if your mind's not here, you're not noticing them, right? Your body might be here, mind not, right? Okay, cool. So, as you may have noticed, I certainly have, anxiety is not easy to kind of overcome. There's a lot going on there, and there's a number of reasons, and I'm going to focus on 3 that I think are really key for using meditation to kind of help with this. And the first is we often recognize we're getting anxious too late. All right? In order for us to take action on something, we have to recognize that it's happening, right? And, maybe you're sitting there and be like, no, I'm very aware it's happening. I'm super aware it's happening. That's the problem, right? But we're noticing kind of late in the process, right? We're noticing at the panic stage, right? So if you think about like a fire, right? Now, a fire starts as one little flame. Now, if you happen to be standing in the exact spot that this little flame pops up, and I don't know, you're carrying a bucket of water, right? You throw it on the flame and it's done. Yeah, pretty easy to manage. Now, if you're not there to notice, that the kind of fire has started, what happens? The fire spreads, right? And it's still possible to kind of extinguish that fire when it spreads, but it is harder to manage. It's much harder to manage. So this is the same with our anxiety, right? If we let it fester, if we let ourselves ruminate and do these things over time, it's like it's spreading, and then it becomes difficult to manage, right? So we want to start getting used to monitoring our mind and checking in. That's why we did the check-in at the beginning of the meditation. We're training ourselves to get used to noticing what our mind is doing. That way we can be like, hey, you know what? I'm starting to feel a little anxious right now. What am I going to do about that, right? Instead of like, whoa, I am absolutely panicking about this project coming up, right? Cool. So that's one issue that we're having, is we're recognizing too late, right? Another one is that sometimes our approach is we're fixing kind of the wrong thing, right? So think about, like, what's the first step your mind goes through from going from okay to anxious? You hate when anxiety is felt physically. Oh yeah, and we're gonna get into that right now, because like physical sensations are a big trigger point, right, for anxiety, right? So the first step, like, our mind's totally fine, we're having a great time, and then boom, we're anxious, right? There's steps in between. We don't really think about it because it happens really fast. But the first thing that happens is we come into contact with something, right? Now, that can be a person that makes us anxious. That can be a situation. That can be an event coming up. That can be a physical sensation. That can be a thought. That can be a memory, an idea, right? It doesn't have to be some like actual tangible thing, right? It can be a thought, right? But we have to come into contact with something, right? So let's take the example of a social event, right? Just for argument's sake, kind of social anxiety, right? So somebody tells us, "Hey, I'm having a party, and I want you to come," right? Which is very nice, you know. But sometimes we have social anxiety. What happens? We start to think about it. We're getting anxious, and then what's our solution? Right? We're starting to really panic. We're gonna say something dumb when we're there. What's our solution? Nah, I just won't go. Right? We sever contact. This is a kind of our main tactic, right, for dealing with anxiety, trying to avoid it, trying to sever contact with it. And the interesting thing about this method is it appears to work well. Right? You don't go to the party. I'm no longer anxious. I won't be going. You know? But that relief is temporary, right? Why? Because contact is completely unavoidable. There will always be another party. There will always be another project. There will always be another public speaking thing, right? That's part of life, is we come into contact with people, things, situations, thoughts, ideas. That is being alive. That is part of it, right? And we can try really hard to avoid all the things that we don't like there, but that is quite challenging, and in my experience is not a great solution to something that is kind of inevitable, coming into contact with things, right? So that's kind of our, at least for me, that'd be my main tactic, right? So we have to think about, is that the best tactic, right? And then another thing that makes anxiety pretty difficult is that we're just really familiar with the things that make us anxious, right? So we come into contact with something. Now what? All right? Our mind is like, oh, it's going to label this thing, right? We come into contact with anything, right? Again, a person, thought, event, idea, whatever. Our mind labels it. It labels it as positive, negative, or neutral. That's pretty much it, right? I like this. I don't like this. I am indifferent to this, right? That's kind of the different feelings that we can have in our mind, right? So anxiety is obviously a negative label, right? So we come into contact with something, and then our mind is like, boy, that's not good. No. Not a fan of that. Nope. Right? And then the next time we come into contact with that thing, our mind does the same thing, right? Next time, same thing. And we're starting to build up a connection that this thing equals bad, right? So I'll give a little personal experience from me. I have had many sort of kind of phobias and things that make me really anxious. And one of them was itching, right? So now you probably get an itch and you scratch it and you move on with your life. But me, no, I would get an itch and immediately I'd be like, how long is this going to last? I don't like this feeling, right? Like Janelle was saying, like a physical kind of sensation. And I would kind of go down this rabbit hole of all these things that are a problem because I have an itch, right? Now, my mind was not born into this world thinking itching is negative, right? It happened at some point. I had this thought, my mind made this connection, and then that connection was reinforced through familiarity, through repetition. Next time I got an itch, oh yeah, bad again, right? Next time I got an itch, oh no, not again, bad. So our mind is constantly labeling things out in the world, right? And part of our anxiety is based in the fact that our mind has labeled this thing as bad to us, right? Now, your mind's just doing what it's used to, for me with the itching, like it's hard to kind of blame my mind for getting upset about itching when, for 4 years, every time I had an itch, I would get anxious. So our mind's like, okay, like, yeah, this is bad. I don't like it. So it takes time to kind of reverse this process a little bit. And so this is an example of how familiarity can be problematic, right? It's, we use this technique of familiarity to do wonderful things with meditation, but our mind can be familiar with negative things and it's hard to shift, right? So I think these are 3 interesting things to think about with your own anxiety. Recognizing if you're recognizing it a little bit late, right? Are you trying to sever contact, right? Is that the best method? And are you super familiar with this thing to the point that you're instantaneous? Your mind is going there instantaneously. So what can we do about this, right? These are 3 core problems, but what can we do, right? So to fix the first one, we want to start trying to recognize our anxiety earlier on in the process when the fire is smaller, right? This is called mindfulness. This mindfulness is a word that is used a lot in a lot of different scenarios, and there are a lot of different definitions that have been kind of weaved in and out of it. How I like to define it is a moment-to-moment awareness of your thoughts for the purpose of being able to respond skillfully, right? So if we are able to kind of check in and notice, hey, you know what, I'm starting to feel a little anxious right now, we're catching anxiety before maybe we're down to the point where we feel really helpless about doing anything about it. So this is a training, right? Mindfulness is a training. And a suggestion that I like to give people when trying to encourage them to train in this technique, mindfulness, is to set an alarm, right, on your phone, or I don't know, maybe you don't like phones or you don't have one, I don't know, like a sticky note or something by your book that you read every morning, right? Anything to kind of just remind you, hey, check in. And it's going to be just like we did in the meditation. How am I feeling right now? You don't even have to do anything about it, right? We're just getting used to paying attention to what our mind's doing, which is not something that we normally do, right? We normally just let our mind do all sorts of things. And then, it ends up being really anxious. And we're like, hey, what's going on? Why am I anxious, right? Our mind's just kind of going all over the place, right? And we're not really aware of what's happening all the time. So this is something really important, and it is a huge kind of first hurdle in training in meditation. Noticing, right? Recognition, noticing early. Janelle, mindfulness is helpful for binge eating. Yes. So this technique, mindfulness, is not just for anxiety, right? It is really to catch your mind entering a kind of negative or even, positive too. You use mindfulness to be like, hey, I'm starting to feel pretty good. Why? What's going on here, right? It's all about noticing. It's like you're like a little statistician, or is that a word? A statistician? I think it is. Yeah, you're taking notes. Oh, that's quite interesting. You have like a lab coat on and a clipboard. Oh, interesting. Oh, that's yeah. Like you're taking kind of note of what's going on, right? Do you like my impression of a scientist? It's not that good. Okay, so set an alarm, right? Good practice, and eventually you won't need the alarm. That's the goal, right? The goal is that you're just going to kind of check in with yourself, notice what's going on upstairs a little bit more, right? The other suggestion I have, and this will be the last one that we talk about today, and then we'll do another short meditation. And like I said, this is a 2-part class. So next week we're going to talk more about this and really focus on, okay, we've recognized we're anxious. Now what? Now what do we do, right? That's going to be next week. But the other thing to kind of that I would encourage you to start trying to do is changing which part of the transition from okay to not okay you're trying to target as the fix area, right? So when we're getting anxious, we come into contact with something. We've already kind of talked about that. It's a temporary relief. And we're starting to build a habit of avoiding things that are unavoidable, which, not really a great solution, long-term solution to the problem. So that's not great. We don't want to do that, right? And now labeling. We talked about labeling after we come into contact with something. Our mind is labeling something. Now, this seems like it'd be a good spot to try to like catch ourselves, right? But it's very hard because our mind is constantly labeling things, and it happens, boom, really fast. Right. So this can be a difficult step to try to, in the process of getting anxious, to focus on trying to recognize. Now, after labeling, what happens? Right? Come into contact with something, we're like, that's not good. That's not good. Nope, I don't like that. And what happens? We ruminate, right? We start to exaggerate how bad this thing actually is, right? Exaggeration, rumination, going down the rabbit hole of thoughts. Really what's happening is we're kind of teaching ourselves, not only is this thing bad, not only was I totally correct to label this as bad, it's way worse than I ever possibly imagined, right? So like, let's take the social event, right? You have to go to this party, right? What if I say something dumb, right? Then you start to like kind of ruminate around that. Like, I'm always saying the wrong thing. Always? No, come on. You're not always saying the wrong thing. But in this moment, when we're starting to get anxious, we start to exaggerate this truth a little bit, right? And that really solidifies the label, the negative label. The good news is that rumination is something that we can catch, right? It's going to take effort. Right? And the alarm is a good technique to kind of to help doing that. But we can catch rumination. We know when we're going down the rabbit hole, right? Sometimes it's hard to pull ourselves out, right? But we can recognize when it's happening, right? So this is the step that I always recommend people try to be more aware of, right? And for now, we're just trying to be aware of it, right? Next week, we're going to talk about what to do when we become aware of it. But right now, we just want to be aware of it. If we're not aware of it, we can't do anything about it, right? So when you start to catch yourself kind of spinning the wheels, right, and catastrophizing this situation that's making you anxious, right? Or like if I had the itching, like I'd be like, this is never going to go away. This is never going to go away. And it does, right? But that's kind of ruminating and exaggerating that kind of future outcome, right? That's where you want to try to catch anxiety, right? That's a really good spot to try to extinguish the flames before it grows a little bit more. Because after exaggeration really solidified that this thing's bad, we start to kind of feel like there's nothing we can do, right? We feel like helpless. We just kind of I wish this wouldn't happen. I wish this wasn't the case, right? We start to feel powerless, that we can't do anything about it. So the exaggeration phase is really key, in my opinion, right? Lisa, love setting the alarm, and we'll need it this weekend when visiting some friends. Yeah, look, and it can be discreet, make it on buzz, you don't need this big alarm going off. Everyone's like, hey, what's that? Oh, no. Don't worry about that, right? It's your own personal little thing, Right. Cool. What about anxiety that comes from, Leslie, that comes from what? Let me know. But yeah, Lisa, that it's definitely, I would recommend doing that. And again, if you don't like alarms because they're disruptive, sticky notes or whatever, get creative. Yeah, it's all about checking in, right? It's all about checking in. Okay, cool. So that's where I want to stop today. So today was all about we're basically just kind of thinking about anxiety at a little bit deeper level than maybe, hey, I'm anxious, this sucks, right? So these are some things that you can kind of pour over a little bit, right? And then again, next week, we're going to talk about, okay, I recognize I'm getting anxious. Now, what do I do about this? How can I lessen this anxiety, right? Okay, cool. So I want to do another meditation. It'll be very quick again. It'll be about 5 minutes, and it's going to be very similar to what we did before. But we're going to do something called a counting meditation, right? And this meditation, it's a breathing meditation, but instead of just kind of focusing on breathing in and out, we're actually going to count our breaths. This is a very good meditation for if you are very anxious, right? Sometimes, at least I have found that when I'm really anxious, sitting down and just kind of, being really flowy with my breath is like not happening. My mind is spinning, right? And so sometimes it's helpful to give your mind a job. That's what we're going to do. Our mind has a job, and its job is to count our breaths, right? I will guide us through this, but essentially what we're going to do is same thing. We're going to breathe in and out, and then we're going to say 1. And you do it in your head right now. I don't know, because you could use this technique anywhere, but if you say it out loud, people might be like, what are you counting? But you could just do it in your head silently. So we're going to in and out 1. In and out 2, right? And we're just going to keep counting. Now, as soon as you lose count, or you're like, what was that? Right? At the moment that happens, like, was I at 5? Right? You're just going to be like, whoops, up. My mind has drifted a little bit. Let me get back to this, and we're going to start again at 1, right? That's it. That's the technique. It's the exact same process. We're choosing to focus on counting our breaths. We're paying attention to when we're not counting our breaths, and we're bringing our attention back to counting our breaths. Right? Meditation is all that is required for something to be meditation, is that you are making a choice to focus on something exclusively, noticing when you're not, bringing your attention back. Cool? Okay. We're going to do a counting meditation. Oh, wait. Here we go. Question coming in. Leslie, that comes from hearing about world politics or climate change. So, again, those things, worries of future states, right? They're kind of happening now, but our mind is drifting. What if this doesn't get any better, right? What if we can't fix climate, right? We start to get anxious about that. Now, you sitting here and thinking about it is not going to fix climate change, by just meditating, right? But what we're after is to kind of lessen the extent that it traps our mind into the future, right? And it's the exact same concept when you notice yourself starting to ruminate about that. Maybe you're like, I can't believe nobody believes in this. Look at all the weather changes. Like, right? What is that? That's That's like kind of rumination. It's actually not really exaggeration. It's happening, but we're ruminating about it, right? And that's the point where we want to be like, okay, I am ruminating about this. It's starting to get me a little anxious. All right. I'm going to do something about it, which we're going to learn next week. But it's the same process. No matter what your trigger is, it's the same process for trying to keep yourself in a relaxed state. Keep your relaxed self at the forefront of your life. Cool. Great question. Thanks. Okay, so go ahead. Make sure you're comfy. If you were not comfy in your previous meditation, go ahead and change to a comfier area solution. And you can go ahead and close your eyes, and we are going to do a counting meditation for about 5 minutes. I'm going to guide us through it. Okay. Let's check in once again. How are you feeling now? We're not comparing it to before. Before is done. How are you feeling now, in this very moment? You now know why we're doing this, why we're practicing this. You're training your mind in mindfulness. You're training your mind to detect when things are happening, so that way you can do something about them, like an early warning system. So just ask yourself, how am I feeling right now? And having done that, you can once again turn your attention to your breath, breathing in and out. But this time we're going to count our breaths. So you're going to breathe in and out, and then say 1. In and out. 2. See how high up you can count before you lose track. And whenever you lose track, no big deal. We're just going to start again at 1. In and out. Gently, naturally. If your mind starts to drift, it's thinking about something you have to do later, you just put those thoughts aside for now and go back to counting. In and out. 1. In and out. 2. Allow yourself to relax. Allow yourself to kind of sit with your breath. Sit with counting your breaths. Single pointedly focused on breathing in and out. 1. In and out. 2. As you begin to really plug into your breath single pointedly, exclusive focus, you may start to notice some interesting things about breathing, things that have been there all along, but are maybe something you haven't noticed before. Maybe you're noticing how the air feels cool when you breathe in. Maybe you're noticing how that air feels warmer when you breathe out. Maybe you're noticing your body moving with your breath, your shoulders rising and then falling, your chest expanding and then contracting, your feet on the floor, your legs pressed against the cushion, every aspect of you, an active participant in each moment of your breath. Focusing on something single-pointedly illuminates some of the subtleties of that activity. Right now, you are finding some subtle joys in breathing in and out. 1. In and out. 2. Okay, when you're ready, you can open your eyes. You can stop counting. Unless you like to keep counting. I don't know. I can't stop you. So, again, it's the same structure, right? Meditation has a structure. Choosing to focus on something, noticing when you're not focusing on that thing you've chosen to focus on, and then bringing your attention back. It doesn't really matter the method, right? So maybe you really enjoyed just focusing on your breath, right? The sensations of breathing, not counting, right? 108. Wow. That's unbelievable. I feel like that's so high that I would normally just make a mistake normally. That's great, Janelle. That's awesome. Yeah. So you might have connected with the first one, right? You're like, I just kind of like chilling there and focusing on my breath. Maybe you liked the counting one, right? It doesn't matter which one. And there's countless more. It's the same thing, right? It's the exact same process. You just got to find what works for you. So these are just two methods, and we'll do over the course of this channel. We do a lot, right, to see what happens there. Lucia, I definitely noticed my heart beating. Amazing. Okay, so that's a really cool thing, right? Maybe I should add that into my little speech there when I'm doing it. But the heart beating is a wonderful one, right? So your heart is beating all the time, right? If we're lucky. But we don't ever really notice it, right? Unless we actively focus on it, right? And so what's happening is, so we're really plugged into our breath, right? And now all of these subtleties about our body, right? About this moment, all these subtleties about this moment are starting to reveal themselves, like your heart beating, right? I can feel my heart beating with each breath. How interesting, how cool, right? Awesome. That's a really cool experience. Huh? I'm glad you had that. Okay. 45. Wow. Hey, you guys are pretty good at this. I think I lost track around 15. Okay. So that's it for today. We're going to continue next week with this topic because anxiety is a huge topic in meditation and definitely one of the bigger entry points and things people are looking for when they're getting into meditation. So we'll continue with that, and we'll talk about, okay, I've noticed I'm getting anxious earlier. That's awesome. Now what? All right. Carol, thank you. I appreciate that. It means a lot to me. Thanks. So if you did enjoy yourself, I encourage you to come back. I do this every week, barring some sort of event I have to go to or whatnot. But we will be doing this next week. And if you haven't subscribed to this YouTube channel and you feel comfortable doing so, huge help to me. Massive. Biggest help you could probably give me. And it gives you little notifications whenever I'm going live. All my old videos are up there if you want to check out some other stuff that we've done if you're new. So if you wouldn't mind subscribing, that'd be awesome. Put a big smile on my face. And if you're like, hey, you know what? This is really cool stuff. I'm pretty into this, right? I'd like to take this a little further. I do one-on-one classes. I do private sessions. I do them over Zoom, right? And it's very laid back. If you can't tell, I'm a laid back guy. I joke around. This should be fun, and we're gonna have fun. So we can talk about whatever you want in the one-on-one sessions. That's the beauty of them, right? Maybe you're not here for anxiety. Maybe you're here to be kinder to yourself, or some. There's a million things we can focus on, and we can really focus on those things. So Janelle, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm glad you enjoy the one-on-ones. I love those. So if that is interesting to you, I'm gonna put my email in the chat right now. Just email me and we'll find a time that works for you. Right? It is Keith@meditationbreaks.com. I said like a radio announcer or something. Okay. I'm typing it now. There. Okay. Email me if you want to do one-on-one. Email me if you have any questions. Email me for anything. Right? Doesn't matter. Cool. Little Yellow Bird, thank you. I'll see you next week. I'm glad you had a good time. Lucia, thank you. It really means a lot to me. I appreciate that. And I'm glad you had a good experience. Thank you everyone for being here. I love teaching and I couldn't do that without you guys. So thank you for taking time out of your day to learn something new. All right. And I'll see you guys next week. We'll continue this discussion on anxiety. All right. Haley, thanks so much. Lucia and I attended this for a class assignment. It was a great experience. Really? Oh, that's interesting. Hey, Haley or Lucia, email me if you want to. You don't have to. But I'd love to know like what school or what class was having you do this, right? Because I also do stuff in universities and schools and corporations and stuff like that. So maybe we can work something out. That'd be cool. All right. Everyone have a great night, and hopefully I'll see you next week. All right. Take care.